Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at one of the most stunning marriages of human ingenuity and natural beauty ever created. We're exploring the story of a structure that literally defined an era. But to truly appreciate it, you've got to realize that this iconic bridge was born out of sheer defiance. The Golden Gate Strait was a 1.6-kilometer gap of rushing tempest that pretty much everyone thought was absolutely, undeniably impossible to bridge.
So, I want to pose this question directly to you. How exactly do you span an impossible gap? Picture the scene. It's the early 20th century, right? The bustling city of San Francisco has just triumphantly pulled itself out of the smoldering rubble of the devastating 1906 earthquake. But it's geographically trapped. Bounded by water on three sides, the city's growth is completely bottlenecked. Cars are literally lining up for hours just to get on crowded ferry boats. They desperately needed to cross this tumultuous strait, but the natural environment? It was incredibly hostile.
Okay, let's dive into this. 7 trillion. That is the staggering amount of water in liters rushing through the Golden Gate Channel every single day. You've got millions of liters of fresh mountain water violently colliding with the Pacific Ocean tide, and it's flowing through at speeds nearing 15 kilometers per hour. To put that crazy number into perspective for you, that flow is about twice that of the entire Mississippi River system. It's basically a raging whitewater inferno. Building a structure to withstand this was an engineer's worst nightmare.
Which brings us to the money and the visionary behind it. Other top engineers looked at these brutal conditions and slapped a massive $250 million price tag on the project. But then we have Joseph Strauss. Strauss was this ambitious, 1.6-meter-tall tinkerer and self-promoter from Chicago who had really only built short, functional drawbridges before this. But he wanted to be a legend. So he makes an incredibly audacious pitch. He promises to build this monumental structure for a tenth of the cost, just $25 million.
Now, because Strauss severely lacked experience with massive suspension spans, he actually did something very smart. He brought in the experts. He hired Charles Ellis, a brilliant guy who became known as the Mad Calculator. In a completely pre-computer era, Ellis tackled this unprecedented challenge with nothing but simple pencils, massive stacks of paper, and a hand-cranked adding machine. The sheer mental effort to calculate all that math by hand was staggering, but he successfully designed a flexible suspension bridge that could, theoretically at least, handle the immense physical stresses.
But as we all know, a great design on paper still has to survive brutal natural elements in the real world. The channel was 370 feet deep, roughly 112 meters, and continually scoured by those powerful currents. To build the foundation for the South Tower, construction divers had to work 30 meters underwater, and because of the heavy sediment, they were working totally blind, in pitch darkness. They were restricted to agonizing 20-minute shifts during the brief lulls in the tide.
So, to conquer this chaotic underwater environment, Strauss's team came up with a massive innovation. They constructed a 9,000 metric ton watertight concrete fender. It was effectively the size and shape of a football field, acting as this giant buffer against the currents. From there, divers used blast tubes to direct black powder bombs, literally flattening the bedrock. It was the very first time large-scale underwater blasting was used for a bridge support. Once it was sealed, they pumped out over 35 million liters of water, leaving a dry, empty hole right in the middle of the roaring strait.
And this brilliantly illustrates the next massive challenge. To conquer that sheer scale, the towers that went up required massive ingenuity. Unlike traditional rigid stone towers, these were designed as a vertical maze of hollow steel cells, each about 1 meter square. This allowed the immense towers to flex in the wind and potential earthquakes. But assembling them? That meant riveting gangs had to drive 600,000 white-hot rivets into each tower. The conditions inside those cramped cells were absolutely deafening. And even worse, the heat from the rivets melted the red lead paint on the steel, releasing deadly toxic fumes that caused severe nausea and lead poisoning.
Seeing his men getting sick, Strauss mandated some really extraordinary safety protocols for the 1930s. He required tinted safety goggles, strict use of safety lines, where stunting got you immediately fired, by the way, and, absolutely crucial to our story, he replaced the toxic red lead paint with an iron oxide paint. That iron oxide primer was an earthy tone that the public immediately fell in love with, and it incidentally became the beloved international orange color the bridge is famous for today. Pretty cool, right?
Strauss understood a fundamental truth: safer workers are faster workers. His most famous safety innovation was investing in a massive net suspended under the entire roadway to catch falling men. In an era where a $25 million project was tragically expected to cost 25 lives,
a life for $1 million, this net miraculously caught and saved 19 falling workers. These men proudly dubbed themselves the Halfway to Hell Club.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the shift to the massive cable undertaking. Once the towers were done, they had to tackle the physics of the main cables. And guys, these aren't just ropes. They are massive, 20,000 metric ton wire bundles nearly a meter in diameter. They literally bear the weight of the suspender ropes and the entire roadway. Engineers had to string more than 28,000 kilometers of wire. To visualize that, it's enough wire to circle the Earth 3 times at the equator. Just wild.
And this is where the engineering gets aggressively fast, which was critical for the project. The John Roebling Company was contracted for the cables, and they were facing a demanding 12-month schedule with severe financial penalties for every single day they went over. So they completely revolutionized cable spinning. Instead of slowly dragging a wire across and sending an empty wheel back, they created a continuous loop. They sent spinning wheels from both ends simultaneously. The wheels would meet in the middle, elegantly trade cables, and return. This meant wire was being laid 100% of the time, effectively doubling the speed of anything done before.
Thanks to this dual spinning technique, the pace on the bridge became absolutely frantic and thrilling. Workers were unrolling an astonishing 1,600 kilometers of wire in a single 8-hour shift. Think about that speed for a second. The cables just grew thicker and thicker as they compacted tens of thousands of pencil-thin wires into the strongest cables ever made up to that point in history.
The result of this incredible burst of technological efficiency? The most critical and difficult phase of the upper bridge construction was fully completed by May of 1936. They utterly beat that strict 12-month timeline and finished months ahead of schedule, dodging all those penalties and keeping the momentum of the whole project roaring forward. A massive win for the new cable spinning tech.
Let's move to and see how this builds. With the cable strong, it was time for the final piece of the puzzle, the suspended roadway. To keep those massive towers from toppling inward or outward, engineers had to build the roadway symmetrically, extending out from each tower at the exact same time. This actually caused a temporary, distinct upward kink in the middle of the bridge due to the unbalanced weights. But it slowly leveled out as the two ends finally met. To handle all this natural shifting, the roadway was fitted with brilliant, flexible copper expansion joints.
So following this frantic timeline, from breaking ground in the absolute depths of the Great Depression in 1933, battling blind underwater dives for the South Pier in 34, driving millions of rivets for the towers by 35, executing that hyperspeed cable spinning in 36, all the way to opening day on May 27, 1937, the Golden Gate Bridge was built on time, under budget, and against literally all odds. 200,000 joyful people flooded the span to celebrate on foot that very first day.
But the construction of the Golden Gate Bridge never truly stopped. Today, there's a place hidden near the base called the Boneyard, and it represents a daily, never-ending battle. The strait is plagued by heavy advection fog, relentless wind, and highly corrosive salt. A dedicated team of 35 painters and ironworkers are out there constantly scraping off rust, repriming, and painting. If raw steel is exposed for more than 2 hours out there, it literally begins to degrade.
So the crucial point is, because of this relentless environment, the bridge is a living, breathing piece of engineering that requires constant evolution to survive. When the 7.1 magnitude Loma Prieta earthquake hit in 1989, the bridge survived intact, but it was a serious wake-up call. Engineers have since done massive seismic retrofits. We're talking completely replacing the land-based steel towers and installing seismic isolation bearings. These upgrades allow the bridge to literally decouple from the ground forces, meaning it's now designed to survive a massive 8.3 magnitude earthquake.
It leaves us with a truly profound realization. The Golden Gate Bridge is an absolute triumph of art and structural engineering. It's a beautiful symbol born from a mad calculator's math and a dreamer's sheer will. But as the fog rolls in and the ocean salt eats at the steel, nature is working daily to tear it right back down. It's this perpetual daily tug-of-war. So how long can human dedication keep the Golden Gate standing? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.